Hello everyone, how are you all doing? I do hope that you are doing fine. So now we have reached the third module of this class and today we'll be discussing our lesson 5. But before I begin my lecture for lesson 5, I would just like to congratulate you for producing very beautiful output from our project from the previous module. I was having fun listening to the song and while watching your music video. So somehow I felt like you already have a sense of patriotism and nationalism within you, and I think you have already understand what are the rights that every Filipino citizen should possess. So those things are very important, and you just have to understand that we need a lot of people to watch those videos because we are setting an advocacy, and it's very important that once you have an advocacy, a lot of people should be able to hear it. So we have shared our advocacy through a song, and those outputs that you have produced are just really beautiful. So you really deserve to be congratulated for what you have created. So again, congratulations. And we are already halfway with our class for this semester, but there are still a lot of things to learn. And now we have reached lesson 5. For our lesson 5, we'll be discussing about the revised penal code and some other very important special penal laws. So you have to understand that there are actually a lot of crimes that has been defined and punished under our revised penal code, but I have just selected a few of these crimes or felonies, given that not all are applicable to you. These provisions that I have selected and this special penal special penal laws that I have included in our lesson 5 are actually those very important that have actually those are common crimes. At the same time, those laws or provisions that may have a relationship to you in your performance and your duties and functions as future teachers in this country. So it's better that we'll be able to talk about them, and we will not dig deeper into this laws, given that what I need for you is just to have a basic understanding for this laws, for you to be aware of these laws that are existing. At the same time, you will have very basic understanding on these laws so that you'll be able to once you are aware of this laws, then you'll be able to stay away or refrain from doing this prohibited acts or felonies in our country, and for you to become a better law-abiding citizens in our country. So with that, let's start our lecture. And again, please do take down some notes in this lecture because, again, my lesson would come out in your pre-final examination, which I will be giving by the end of the month of June. So I do hope that you'll be taking down notes and understand what I am about to discuss to you. So with that, let's start with lesson 5. So let's start with the revised penal code and other special penal laws. So first, you have to understand the revised penal code is actually the embodiment of all the felonies and the crimes that are punishable here in the Philippines. And all, since the revised penal code does not cover all the laws, because there are current laws that are being created by our legislative branch, it is being covered by the special penal law. So it's very important that the revised penal code and the special penal laws would go together, because these laws are very much important, most especially in criminalizing some acts and in giving punishment to these acts. So again, the revised penal code is actually the focus of our criminal law in the Philippines. So it describes and defines the different crimes that may be committed here in the Philippines. At the same time, it provides for penalties and punishments. So there are, again, as I mentioned, that there are a lot of felonies or crimes that can be committed under the revised penal code, but we have just chosen a very few laws or very few provisions under our revised penal code, because our focus here is to make you understand some laws that have practical application to you in your daily lives, at the same time practical application as you go on and perform your functions as future teachers in our country. So I do hope that you'll understand these provisions that I'll be talking about. So we will just be not going and will not again dig deeper into these provisions, but rather we'll just understand what are the basic elements for these crimes for you to become liable for these crimes. And to start with, so to begin with, under our revised penal code, you have to understand that those acts and omissions that are punishable under our law are called felonies. And felonies, for most of us common Filipino, we usually call them crimes. But under the revised penal code, they are called felonies. And you have to understand that felonies are either committed by either deceit, or in its Latin term, it's called dolo, or fault. And under its Latin term, it's called culpa. So first, deceit. What is deceit? When you say deceit, a person has the intention to do or commit an injury against another person. So ikaw, personally, you want to do something bad against another person. You want to cause an injury to that another person. So that's deceit, and you are being punished under our laws because you have committed deceit. And at the same time, our laws, the revised penal code, would also punish those that have committed fault, or those persons who, because of their imprudence, because of their negligence, or because of their lack of foresight or lack of skill, have committed fault. And because of this fault that they have committed, they have caused injury to another person. So even if you don't have the intention to do an injury to another person, still you were able to make an injury to another person, and you are still being punished by it, because you have to understand that under our laws, you are expected to be always cautious. At the same time, you have to, in everything that you are do, you must be careful and you must be prudent, and that is why you are being punished if you will commit fault, because most of the time this fault or this culpa that you have committed can often cause injury to other persons. So because of that, they are being punished. Some acts caused by fault or by your culpa are being punished under our law, because most of the time you also commit, because of this fault or culpa, you commit injury to another person. So that is why you are being punished under our laws. So again, under our laws, these acts and these punishable acts are called felonies. At the same time, felonies can be committed either by deceit. When you say deceit, you really have the intention to commit a crime, and or by fault, or due to imprudence, or negligence, lack of foresight, or lack of skills, you unintentionally committed a crime, or you unintentionally committed a felony against another person, you can still be liable under our laws. So that's why these two are being punished, deceit and fault, your dolo and culpa. So these are the kinds of felonies that being punished under our revised penal code. So here, criminal liability. Let's talk about criminal liability. When is there criminal liability? Under our revised penal code, it says that criminal liability shall be incurred in two instances. First, by any person committing a felony, although the wrongful act done be different from that which he intended, and then by any person performing an act which would be an offense against persons or property were it not for the inherent impossibility of its accomplishment or on account of the employment of inadequate and ineffectual means. First, we have to talk about criminalability. First, again, there is already criminalability when there is intention of committing a felony. You want to injure other persons. Because of that, you are already criminalizable if there is an external act. If it's still inside your mind, you're still planning to commit a crime, and you're not telling anyone that you're committing a crime, you're just planning, you are not criminally liable for it. However, once you do something, an external act or an overt act that would eventually injure another person, then that's the time that you are already criminally liable because you already push through with your intention to commit a crime. So even if your original intention or the wrongful act that you have done is different from your original intention, you are still criminally liable. So what are examples as to what are those acts or examples as to when you can say that you have committed a crime although the wrongful act done be different from that which he intended. So meaning lahi, naka-intention per lahi ang imong nabuhat. First, mistake, error in persona, which means you have the intention. For example, you have seen your boyfriend, or let's just say lucky ka. You have seen your girlfriend kissing another guy. And because you were so mad, you intended to kill the guy whom your girlfriend is kissing. But the thing is, instead ang laki imong napatay, ang bayi mo'y napatay. Is it possible nga you are still committed, your girlfriend ang imong napatay, are you still liable? Yes, of course, because you still have committed a crime. You have a criminal liability because you have committed a felony, although the wrongful act that you have done is not one which you have intended, because your original intention was to kill the guy whom your girlfriend is kissing, but in the end you have killed your girlfriend. So again, you are still liable for that. Another example for it is you are trying, your original intention first was just to assault, no, not assault, but to injure, physical injuries, to injure your katunyong silingan nangangawat sa inyong baka. And you have done it, like weeks na after nangawat siya, kaya sa pa nakakapagabalo. So your original intention was just to injure that person. However, upon doing the act, sa ulo nimo na igo ang kato inyong silingan. Under our law, you are still liable for it because you have the intention to commit a crime. But the thing is, it's not your intention because your original intention was just to commit injury. Pero napatay nimo. Still, under our laws, you are criminal liable because you deliberately have done a criminal act. And because of that, you are still to be punished with the criminal act that you have done. Another example would be kanang error in persona. You try to kill a girl named, you were looking for a girl named Mary because you want to kill her because di na kaganahan niya. Pero instead of killing Mary, you have killed Jane. And that's because parehas lagi itsura and parehas lagi suit during the time you are about to kill Mary. Pero kay tungod sa imong gibuhat, si Jane imong napatay instead of si Mary, you are still liable because you have the intention to kill. It's just that dili si Mary imong nakill but si Jane. But still the intention, the deliberate intent of committing a felony is the one that is being punished under our laws. So that's why you are still liable for it. The second paragraph of this one, we are of when is there criminal liability is when we were talking about the second paragraph is we're talking about impossible crimes. And when you say impossible crimes, these are crimes that are committed against another person or a property. But the thing is, the crime that you are about to commit is already impossible to be committed. And saan man na impossible crime? How do we explain it? I'll give you an example. Naakay kasuko ni John. And tungod sa imo kasuko ni John, you wanted to kill him. Again, you wanted to kill him. So, one night, niadto kasi ang balay, imong giadto yung kwarto. However, pag abot nimo silang kwarto, namatay na dahil si John. Pero, sa imong kalagot yapon niya, imo gyapon siyang gitadtad og kutsilyo or imong gidugma. You still did something that will injure his dead body. Are you criminally liable for that? Under our laws, yes, you are still criminally liable for that. And that is an example of an impossible crime because you cannot kill a person that is already dead. But under our revised penal code, you are still criminally liable even if what you have done is an impossible crime because what we are actually punishing under this provision is the possibility or your tendency to do a criminal act. Again, you have this tendency to do a criminal act. So as early as now, because you still have the tendency to do something that would injure other person, you are being punished under our revised penal code. And what are another example of an inherent crime? An impossible crime. Let's say you want to punish, or nakakapoy kasukot ni Mary. Si Mary, sita gamit ang term Mary, name ng Mary, di ba? So, you want to punish Mary because nakikasukot niya. So, you want to do something against her. So, you're planning to actually poison her. And, imong gibuhat, nagtimpla ka coffee. For the thing is, instead of putting poison or putting a white substance nga contain poison sa iya nga coffee, sugar man imong nabutang. And the thing is, Mary survived because she was not poisoned at all. But still, you have the intention to poison Mary. So, are you criminally liable even if wala gid na poison si Mary because it was only sugar that you put in her coffee and not the poison? Yes, you are still criminally liable because you have the tendency to commit a crime, and it's your tendencies, these tendencies of committing a crime is what punishing you, or that is being punished. These tendencies of committing a crime are what is being punished under the revised penal code. So because of that, you have to be careful because even if you were not exactly able to commit this crime, but still you have the tendency and you have the overt act. You did something to really you have done it physically to really commit this acts that you are planning. Then you are already liable under our revised penal code because even if ang resulta sa imong giplano di mao sa imong originally or intended, still you have done something that would cause or create an injury against another person, and that is punishable under our laws. Okay? So who are criminally liable? So kinsa may criminally liable? First, we have the principals. Then we have the accomplices, and then the accessories. Again, who are criminally liable? First, principals. Who are the principals? Katuni silang these persons are the ones who took a direct part in the execution of the act. So, nibuhat sila. Nasa direct participation in doing the act because you have to remember that a felony can be committed by different persons, by 5 to 20 persons all together. So again, if these 5 to 20 persons who took direct part in the execution of the act are actually liable criminally under our laws. So they are called the principals. Principals. These are principals sa eskwelahan, but principals because they have direct participation in the crime. Or another person who is considered a principal in the commission of a crime is the person who directly forced or induced other people to commit it. Meaning, gipugos nimo, ikaw mo'y mastermind, ikaw mo'y nagplano nga mo patay ani nga person, and you have induced other person through threats or through money imong gibayaran or through some other promises na kay ihatag kunuhay nila once they commit this crime. Again, since you are the one who induced these people to commit a crime, then you are already criminally liable because you are part one of the principals in committing the crime. And another one is those who cooperate in the commission of the offense by another act without which it would not have been accomplished. Unsa man ni? Basically, you did not directly took part in the commission of the act, and you did not induce other persons. Pero in your participation in the commission of the crime, without you, impossible nga kung without you, dili unta makomit ni nga crime. So, for example, you try to rob a bank and you are actually the security guard of that bank. And the thing is, you hold the key sa main vault or the main door and the main vault of the bank. And the thing is, ikaw mo'y nagpasulod. Wa ka ni nangawat. Wala pug ka wa ka nangawat. At the same time, dili pud ikaw may nagplano sa kawat, pero tungod nimo silang ipasulod sa bangko. And if dili unta tungod nimo, kung wala nimo sila giabrihan, you're not willing to open the doors for them and you're not willing to open the vault for them, diyon ta sila kakawat. Pero kay tungod ikaw may nag-open, you willingly joined the commission of the crime because imo magiabrihan ang doors for them. Because of that, your act because di unta makomited ang crime without your participation. So because of that, kay tungod na amang kay big part in the commission of this crime, then you are automatically held liable as part of the principles of the crime. So again, first, who are criminally liable as principals, those who have direct participation or in the execution of the act, or those who have induced other persons to commit the act, and those without them, the act would not have been accomplished. So kung dili tungod nila, dili unta ma-accomplished ang crime, pero kay tungod ni participate man sila through their own ways, then they can be considered as a principal to the crime. So let's talk about accomplices. So, accomplices. Who are the accomplices? Under our revised penal code, accomplices are those who are not included as principal or those who are not the principals, part of the principals of the crime, but have accomplished some task previously or simultaneous during the commission of the act. When you say previously, so katong, for example, sa mga kawat, sila mo'y previously, like for example, kawat sa balay, Yeah, made kunuhay sila, and what they did is before the commission of the crime, ilahan na wala nila gilak, gituyo nila nga wala gilak ang balay para sa ayon ang pagsulod sa mga those who are mo himo sa kawat, they are still criminally liable. And when you say simultaneous act, imong buhaton is ikaw mo distraction nga ilang gibuhat. So there's this robbery or sa bank na natabo, and then during the robbery padulong na ang pulis, pero nagpatunga ka, nag-action ka, naligsan, kunuhay ka sa patrol car. So now, the police are actually distracted. So during the commission of the crime, simultaneously, nakaigibuhat para dili madakpan tong mga nag-commit sa crime. Then you are still considered an accomplice of the crime. So again, accomplices are not the principals of the crime, but because of their previous or simultaneous act na himo ang crime, then they're still liable for it. And then lastly, we have another type of those persons who are criminally liable are the accessories to the crime. So again, first we have the principals, second we have the accomplices, and third we have the accessories. So the accessories are those who did not take part as either principal or accomplice to the crime, but have taken part in some subsequent manners. Like for example, nangawat, gibaligya ang mga kinawat. So if they have profited from these effects of the crime, then they are liable for it. That's their commission. That's what they have committed. Naki-profit sila sa effects sa crime. So they are still liable as an accessory to the crime. Another one is those who have concealed the body of the crime. Gitaguan. So meaning, for example, destroying the body of a crime or the effects or kuan. Like for example, na ay imuhang amigo nakapatay. Then naan niya ang nasa pusil yung gigamit pagpatay. So what you did, ikaw amigo man nimo siya sa imuha gipatago ang pusil sa nga gigamit sa pagpatay ng a person. You have destroyed or imong gibury ang katong pusil nga gigamit in the commission of the crime. You are still liable under our revised penal code as an accessory to the crime. And the third one is imong gitago or you assist in the commission of the crime by providing you have provided katong mga sa getaway car or mga getaway vehicles tungod ni or imong gitaguan sa imong balay kaning mga tawhana those who have committed crimes. Kaya tungod the people, some people, these principals or accomplices who have committed a crime, what they did is that nanago sila, and you knowingly nga these people, you know that these people have committed a crime, and you allowed them to hide in your house because amigo ko ni sa una and utang kunuhay na loob di mo ani mga persons. You are still criminally liable because you have assisted them kay imos lang gitaguan sa inyong balay. You are criminally liable for it as an accessory to the crime. Or ikaw mo nag-provide sa getaway vehicle or gitawagan kanila nga bay nakisakyanan dira o naa siya ang gamiton sa kawat. You know that they have committed a crime, and para maka-escape sila, ikaw may nag-provide og sakyanan. You're not a principal, you're not an accomplice to the crime, but you have a participation in the commission of the crime. Kaya ikaw may nag-provide escape vehicle for them. Then still, under our revised penal code, you are criminally liable. So again, understood. So first, we have in the commission of a crime who are criminally liable. First, we have the principals. Then the second are the accomplices, and third we have the accessories. So no matter what is your part in the commission of a crime as long as you know that a crime has been committed and you willingly took part in the commission of that crime in whatever manner it is, you are criminally liable. Again, if you willingly participate in the commission of a crime, in regardless of whatever manner it is, then you are criminally liable. So felonies. Let's now talk about the development of felonies. So there are three. Felonies can be consummated, can be frustrated, or can be attempted. When you say consummated, a felony is consummated when all the elements necessary for the execution of the crime and accomplishment are actually present. So meaning you have done, there is consummated crime when all of the elements in the crime are present in what you have done, and you have produced what you have really intended to do. And we will be talking about these elements of the crime once we start defining each of the felonies that are or in the provisions of the revised penal code that we'll be talking about here. So again, to say that a felony has been consummated, it is when all the elements necessary in the commission of the felony are actually present. So that's when there is consummated felony. Then when you say frustrated, it is frustrated when the offender performs all the elements or acts of execution which would produce the felony as a consequence, but nevertheless did not able to produce by reason or of causes independent to the will of the perpetrator. So meaning, what do you mean by that? In simple terms, you have committed all the crimes and all the elements of the felony are actually present, but you were not able to produce your desired felony. The consequences of the desired felony have not actually been produced. So that's when it's called frustrated felony. It's very a common example in frustrated murder. So we'll be talking about murder later on. When you say murder, so you try to kill a person with by employing force, and that's actually considered murder. So imo na siyang gipusil, imo siyang hiktan siyang kamot, you deprive liberty from this person, and when he was already deprived from liberty or from doing something or from moving, imo siyang gipusil. You try to kill that person. So imo siyang gipusil. That's actually considered murder. But the thing is, dili sa imong will, pero pagbot sa Ginoo, instead of hitting the heart, somewhere apart sa iyong shoulder and ego, you were not able to kill the person. Still, the person lived. Still, you are considered to have committed a crime because you have done something. All the elements of the felony of murder are present. But kay tungod, wala siya namatay, then you are guilty of frustrated murder. So again, when you say a frustrated felony, it's when all the elements for the felony are present and you have executed all these acts necessary for the accomplishment of this felony, pero wala nimo nakuha ang imong desired effect. Wala nimo napatay if you want to murder that person, or wala nimo na rape ang person. You really wanted. Actually, there's no frustrated rape daya, by the way. Attempted rape pa daya, sorry. So again, wala nimo nakawat ang something. So wala nimo nakawat, or basta you try to kill or you try to steal something, you try to rob something. Again, wala nimo kay tungod wa nimo nakawat or wa nimo napatay, then all the elements are present, but then you were not able to produce your desired effect, then that falls as a frustrated felony. And then the third one, we have the attempted felony. Attempted felony is that the offender already commenced the commission of a crime, and there's already an overt act, so na siya gibuhat to perform the commission of the crime. but by reason of some causes or some accident, spontaneous, wala niya na-produce ang felony. So, nag-attempt pa siya, pero wala niya na-produce. Is he liable? Yes, that's actually considered as an attempted felony. So, parehaan ng imo na unta siyang giplanuhan og patay and murder. You attempted to you are trying to kill that person, imo na siyang deprive sa iyahang from the use of his body parts, imo na siyang gihiktan. Pero kay pag-action unta nimo pusil sa iyaha, upon killing him, naabot mo yung amigo na nakit-an ka. So, wala nimo siya napusil. So, you were not able to accomplish the crime. And because of that, you are still liable of attempted murder. Kaya imo na siyang gituinan og pusil. You already have the intention. In fact, nag-start na ka in commencing. You have commenced an overt act in the commission of the crime, but wala nimo nabuhat. That is called an attempted felony. So, as an example na to, attempted murder, you are still liable. Again, consummated when everything has been completed, all the elements are present, and the crime has been executed. When you say frustrated, you were not able to produce the desired effect despite having all the elements of the crime present. And when there is attempted felony, when nag-start in the commission, there's already an overt act in the commission of the crime, but due to some circumstances beyond your will, you were not able to accomplish the crime. Then that's an attempted felony. So that is still punishable under the revised penal code. So direct assaults. Now we have come to the specific felonies as described under our revised penal code. And first, we'll be talking about assaults. You have to understand that under the revised penal code, assaults can be only committed against persons and authorities or agents of persons of authorities. So who are these persons and authorities? These are persons directly vested with jurisdiction, and whether individual or some members of a group or corporation or government commission, government corporations or board of commissions. But are teachers considered as persons in authority? Yes, under our laws, teachers are actually considered as persons and authorities, and assaults can be committed against them in the performance of their duties. So once you are working as teachers and you are in the performance of your duties, assaults can be committed against you because you are considered as a person in authority. But who are those agents of persons and authorities? Those are by direct provision of law or by election or by appointment or by competent authorities in charge with the maintenance of the public order and the protection of the security of life and property. So again, direct provision or law, by election or appointment, or by competent authority, they are in charge in the maintenance of peace and order. So they are called agents of persons in authority, and they assaults can be committed against them. And who are these? For examples, mga barangay tanods. They are part of agents as persons of authority. Again, you have to understand that those people who are assigned with the protection or in the maintenance of peace or order are called agents and persons on authority. And what are direct assaults? There are two ways actually to commit direct assaults. First one is without public uprising. Without public uprising, but the thing is, without public uprising, but there's employment of force or intimidation. Ipasakitan mo or gi-intimidate mo, kanang gihadlok mo, for the attainment of any those and for the attainment of any of those effects desired to be committed in the crime of sedition or rebellion, for example. And what are those things they're trying, or the desires to be committed when there is sedition or a rebellion? It's when you want to overthrow the government, or that you want to stop something or you want the government to stop in the implementation of current law, or you are disturbing public peace, or during an election. And I think teachers are very important during an election, just because you are serving during elections. So if ever there are people who will intimidate you, hadlukon mo, hadlukulgaon mo, to stop the election, or ilahang kawaton ang mga ballot boxes in your precincts just because they don't want the election to continue, that's actually considered as direct assault. Gihulga mo nga i-stop ang election. As teachers, then you are in the performance of duty, then that is considered a direct assault. Or gihulga mo to stop all the classes, gihulga mo to overthrow the government. They will do something to overthrow the government and they want to use you, gihulga mo, as teachers, then that's considered actually as direct assault. Another way of committing a direct assault is when without public uprising, pero again gihulga mo, and there's threat or there's force or intimidation, and ang ilahang and the reason why gihulga mo is because they want you to stop from performing your duties or your functions as persons in authorities. Like for you as teachers, gihulga na mo kay di sila ganan magklase. You know, there's force, there's threat, there's an attack. Gilabay mo bato. Unsa pa dira ang pwede lang mabuhat, gipasakitan mo, gibunog mo. Just because they don't want you to perform your duties as persons and authorities. That is actually considered as direct assault. So again, in your performance or functions of your duties, there are people who will intimidate you for them to be able to accomplish some certain consequences, or they desire for you to stop in your performance of your duties, or they want to disturb peace, or they want to stop the election, or anything, or they just want to stop the overthrow the government, and kamo mo ilahang gigamit, then those persons who are doing the threats and those persons who are doing the intimidation are liable for direct assaults. And because of that, liable sila. So that is actually direct assault. And when is indirect assault committed? Under the provisions of our revised penal code, indirect assaults are actually committed when there is direct assault that's happening. So gihulga na mo, and there is another person na nakita ninyo, and that person come to your aid. Gitabangan mo anang person. And the thing is, while that person is helping you, siya na pud ang giatake ani mga tawhana. Then those persons attacking him, kanang person who came to your aid, those persons are actually liable of indirect assaults. So again, because of that, kay initabang man sila, they are supposed to be in your aid as persons in authority, pero kay tungod giigo sila or giapil po sa gulga, giapil po sa glabay og bato, so because of that, those persons doing it are actually liable for indirect assaults because they came to your aid. So those persons rendering aid to the persons in authority, well, they are being directly assaulted, then those persons doing it are also liable for indirect assaults. So again, as persons in authority, kamong mga teachers, since you are future teachers, just if there are people who will try through force and limitation or threats or unsa ba mga unlawful acts, they would try to stop you in the performance of your duties or your functions, then they are liable of direct assaults. And when there are people who will come to your aid, then they will also attack that person. Then that's the time that they're also liable for indirect assaults. So again, direct assaults and indirect assaults. So falsifications, you have to understand that public officers or public employees or notary publics are actually liable in the commission of falsification. So what are those falsifications that can be committed by these public officers or public employees under the revised penal code? First, those who are counterfeiting or imitating handwriting, signature, or rubric. So you try to imitate the signature of other person. Again, you are liable for falsification. Second is causing it to appear that the person have participated in an act or proceeding when they did not participate at all. So, kalagmitan sa mga teachers, you fake things, you have created a document wherein, it seems like you have participated in a it seems like you have participated in an event, but you did not participate at all. So, for example, attendance, that's actually part of falsification. Like, kailangan ka, for the attendance, you needed people to participate, and you're in charge in taking attendance. But the thing is, a lot of people did not participate in the event at all. So, there are missing a number of people in your attendance. But the thing is, you have caused or you have attributed that person have participated in event, pero wala dito just because you have written names of these people in the attendance. And aside from writing their name, you have put down their signature. So that's also considered as falsification, and that is punishable under our laws. A third example of falsification is when in making statements, you have created a document and you have made it appear that this statement is said by this particular person when in fact another person have said it at all. That's also, but you have mostly that can be seen in the writing of the minutes of formal procedures or formal events. Like you have attributed this person, imong gipagawas nga kaning person when nagsulti ani mga statements when in fact that person is not the one who created or who made that statement. That's actually part of falsification. Another one is making untruthful statement or the narration of facts. You're a teacher, naghimo kag report ngan kay tungod incident report. The school wanted an incident report just because a certain accident has happened in your school, and the thing is liable ka, pero you try to bury imong liability in that accident. So in the narration of facts, when you made the incident report in the narration of fact, you have actually changed the narration of facts. Imong gi-change ang nahitabo sa incident report. That's actually considered as a falsification, and you will be liable under our laws. And another one is you alter dates. Yung gipang-usab ang mga dates sa mga documents just because na late ka gihimo and you were not able to submit it on time, imong gi-antedate. Then that's also considered as falsification, and you will be liable under our laws. And what else? Alteration in imong giusab ang mga genuine documents imo, like for example report cards imong you have already submitted grades for your students, pero the thing is sa ilang school records imong giusab the ones nga imong gi-submit is not the real records of the students. Will you be liable under our law? Yes, you will be liable for falsification because you have alterated something in a genuine document that would actually change its meaning. So because of that, because of these alterations that you have made, you are liable of falsification. And then, for example, another falsification is you have issued a different documents, and you have purported that these documents that you have produced are actually genuine documents, when in fact imo din ning gipiki di ay. So meaning gapiki kag documents. You submitted a fake documents because you tried to hide what's in the original document. So you purported that that document you have submitted is actually genuine or true. Then that's actually a falsification. That's considered as falsification under our laws. And then, what else? Yung falsified, issue ka og medical reports. You know, you were not sick at all, but the thing is, you wanted some very long leave. So, nag-issue ka og fake nga medical certificate, then that's actually considered as a falsification. Again, issuing documents purporting to be genuine when in fact these are fake or these are altered documents, then that is considered falsification. Again, falsification can be committed by public officers and employees, and these public officers and employees have actually custody or in charge in the protection of these documents. Then once you alter or you do something or you do those acts that I have committed, then you are those acts that I have enumerated earlier, then you can be liable for falsification under the revised penal code. So bribery. So again, bribery can be committed by public officers and public employees. So again, most of you will be becoming teachers for the Department of Education. So most of you are actually can be liable if you have committed these acts under bribery. So what are those acts that can be committed under bribery? So we have the direct bribery. So what is that? Under the direct bribery, public officials or those officers or those employees who would accept gifts, who would willingly accept gifts or in the consideration of promised or other in consideration of certain amount, and they have agreed to commit a crime in the performance of duty or your functions or in the performance of your official functions and duties, then under our revised penal code, you are liable if you will accept this promise, these gifts, or these bribes. We call them bribes because this is actually bribery. So when you accept this consideration of gift, consideration and promises, or other considerations for you to commit a crime in the performance of your duties and functions, then you are liable of direct bribery. Another thing is, another act that is punishable is when you execute something in consideration of a gift, of a promise, or something, then you execute something in the performance, you execute an act in the performance of your duties and functions, then you are still liable for bribery because you have executed these acts in consideration of these promises or these gifts. Then you are liable of bribery when you commit such acts in the performance of your duties or functions. Or third one, another act that's punished under the crime of bribery is when in the consideration of a promise, in the consideration of a gift, you have refrained from doing something in the performance of your duty. So wala nimo gapabuta-buta ra ka, you have refrained from doing something. So nakay butang na there's an act that you refrained from doing something in the performance of your duty just because gi-promisan ka or ihatagan ka kwarta or there's a promise for promotion or unsa pa pana or there's a gift that has been given to you, that's actually a crime. That's actually still a crime of bribery, direct bribery, just because you refrain from doing something in the performance of your duty. So that's an act of bribery. So again, in bribery, you do in bribery, you're a public officer or a public employee, and you have done something, or you have accepted gifts, you have accepted a promise, or you have accepted any considerations, and you have committed a crime in the performance of your duties or functions, or you have executed an act that which does not which does not which does not constitute a crime, but still in the performance of your duties or functions, and you have done that act in the consideration of this gift or promises, then that's still considered a bribery. Or you have refrained from doing something, then that is still considered bribery, as long as these acts are in the performance of your duties or your functions, and you have received something in return for you to act or not to act. So now we have come to parricide. Parricide is actually one of quite a serious crime, because under the parricide, first element is that a person is killed. So yeah, so parricide can only be committed when there is a person that is killed, and that the deceased has been killed by the accused. So you have been accused and you have killed a person, and that person that you have killed, the deceased, is actually your mother or your father or your spouse or your child, whether legitimate or illegitimate. We'll be talking about legitimacy once we reach lesson 6. But then again, under this provision, legitimate or illegitimate child, or that the person you have killed is the ascendant or your direct ascendant, your ascendant meaning your parents or grandparents, or the ascendant or descendants of your spouse, sa imong asawa, imuhang in-laws, then under our laws, you are liable of committing the crime of parricide. Again, parricide is committed when you have killed a person and you, the accused, have killed that person, and that person you have killed is actually your mother, your father, your children, or your parents, or your spouse, or the ascendants, the descendants of your spouse. Then that is actually considered parricide under our law, and you are liable under the revised penal code. Again, there is blood relationship to the person you have killed. If you have killed a person that is your family, then that is considered as parricide, as long as direct ascendants, first degree, 1 degree ra, so meaning it's either your parents, your spouse, or your descendants, descendants imong mga anak, descendants ni imong anak, or imong asawa mismo. Then under our law, you are considered to have committed the crime of parricide. The next felony that we'll be talking about is actually a very interesting one. Death or physical injuries under exceptional circumstances. And there are 2 ways that this crime can be committed. This is actually very interesting. I don't know why. But here, death or physical injuries under exceptional circumstances. There are 2 ways that this crime can be committed, or this felony can be committed. The first one is you are actually a spouse, and then mag-asawa mo, and then one surprise, you were surprised or you were shocked that you have seen, you have seen your wife having sexual intercourse with another man. So, nakita nimo ang iyong asawa nang kipag-sexual intercourse with another man. And because you were surprised or were shocked to see that your wife or your spouse is having sex with another person, napatay nimo sila or you have inflicted injury to both of them, then under our laws, you are liable by death or physical injuries under exceptional circumstances. And I will tell you why it's very interesting later on. Or the second way of committing death or physical injuries under exceptional circumstances is you're a parent and you come home or asa ka niadto and you saw your daughter who is less than 18 years old, minor, or that of age na siya pero still living under your care. So naagya po sa iyong balay, gapuyo, kay dependent ra gyapon. That daughter is still dependent in your house. So again, you're a parent, you have a daughter, that daughter is either 18 years old or that of age na siya pero still dependent sa imong balay, and you have seen your daughter having sex with another person, sexual intercourse with another person, and napatay pod nimo ng person having sex with your daughter tungod sa imong shock or surprise, or not just your daughter, but not just the person having sex or imong daughter napatay pod nimo, and the first act is dili ra pod ang katong laki nga gipag sexual intercourse sa imong wife, imong napatay, hasta imong wife napatay pod. If you have killed or you have incurred physical injuries to both of them, it's either sa imong asawa, napatay nimo ang asawa o ang lalaki nga nakipag-having sex niya, or napatay nimo ang anak or ang laking having sex with that person, or both imong anak or imong asawa, or both sila napatay nimo because you were shocked or surprised when you saw them having sex with another person. Under our laws, you are liable, but then again, you will not be imprisoned because under this, the penalty for death or physical injuries under exceptional circumstances is just destierro. And when you say destierro, it's just like banishment. Gibanish ka in your hometown. You are not allowed to enter a certain place for a period of time. So if taga-Bali ka, diri nimo sa Bali na patay itong imuhang wife or imong anak na patay, or the person having sex with your wife or having sex with your daughter, diri nimo sa Valermoso na patay, then under our laws, you will be just liable for destierro. So ang buhat di ka mapriso, but you're not allowed to stay in Valermoso. Di ka pwede kasulod sa Valermoso, or that's it. That's the crime. That's actually the penalty, destierro ra. So then again, that's actually very interesting because you have killed a person. But the thing is, ang imong napatay is the person having sex with your wife or having sex with your daughter, or imong wife mismo imong napatay. Di ka pwede mapriso under our laws. Ang imuharang liability is destierro. So meaning na banished ra ka. You're not allowed to enter a certain local government unit, or you're not allowed to be near that person in pila ka kilometers. So because of that, that's actually very interesting because usually when you are able to kill a person, you are liable for reclusion perpetua, or you are liable to be imprisoned for quite a number of years. But under this death or physical injuries under exceptional circumstances, dili ka mapriso, but you will just be banished, so you can still live freely in another place without being deprived of liberty. So that's it. That's actually very interesting, That's the kind of law that we have here. So again, it's very under our laws, it's actually very legal ba? Not really legal, but you will not be imprisoned if ever makita nimo ang imuhang asawa or imuhang anak to have sexual intercourse with another person. Pero you have to remember that there's this element of shock or surprise. And you have to remember po nga wala nimo gi-prostitute imong wife or imong anak. If you're the pimp, bana ka, you're allowed your wife to have sex with another person because imo siyang gi-prostitute. Then under our laws, you have not committed death of physical injuries under exceptional circumstances. Kay imo man siyang i-prostitute. Pero if wala gani, and you just saw them having sexual intercourse with another person, and na-shock ka, you were surprised when you saw that act, then under our laws, you are very much liable. Murder. Murder is interesting also. Under our revised penal code, there is murder when there is unlawful killing that is not considered as parricide or infanticide. Again, parricide, nakapatay ka a family member, or yeah, in infanticide, you have killed a baby. Under our laws, murder is any unlawful killing that is not parricide and is not infanticide, and the following circumstances are present. So meaning na ay mga circumstances, under the circumstances. So again, unlawful killing, but not parricide or not infanticide, but there are some circumstances that are present. So what are these circumstances that are present to be for a killing, unlawful killing of a person to be considered a murder? First, there is treachery, or treachery, gamitan ni mo utok, giplanuhan ni mo, or that you have taken advantage of your superior strength, mas dako ka, mas gamay ni nimo, and you know na kaya ra ni mo siya, so imo siyang gipatay, and you have taken advantage of your strength against that person. That's actually considered as murder. Or with the aid of armed men, nagamit ka armadong mga tao to kill that person para, you know, gamitan ng mga armadong tao to weaken his defense. Imong ginay mga tao, kupin niya siya, answer na para mapatay niya na to. Di siya, wala na kawala ang other person. That's actually considered murder. Second circumstances is when in consideration of a prize or reward. So meaning, gipatay ni mo nga person because gibayran ka. That's actually considered as murder. Third is by inundation of fire. Gisunog ni mo ni siya, imo siyang gipoison, or imong gituyo ni mo buslot ang yang gisakyang bangka. So there's shipwreck, or sa bangka, yate, or sa parang mga barkuha, or derailment in railroad, di ba? Sa mga salida, ginahiktan kay para agian og train, or unsa pa, by means of motor vehicles, imuhang giligsan og sakyanan ang person, or because of that, and in that kind of circumstances, that is actually considered as murder. Imong gisunog, imong gisunog, imong gipoison. Those kinds of circumstances, those are considered as murder. Another one is on occasion of calamities. Imong gipatay ni nga person, kabalo kang galinog na kagubot na. Or gabagyo, na ibaha nga dako kayo, imong gituyog lumos nga person. That's actually considered as murder. Another one is kaning importante most of the time, evident premeditation. So imong giplanuhan, evident premeditation, imong giplanuhan, years imong giplanuhan para mapatay ni nga person. You were so tricky, ha. You have imong giplanuhan tanan imong gitiktikan ni siya nga person. Diba? Imong for pila ka weeks or pila ka months, sikag sunod ani nga person, imong gilantaw asa siya moagi, yung schedule padulong sa opisina. That's actually evident premeditation, and that kind of circumstances is considered as circumstances to consider the crime that you have committed as murder. So again, evident premeditation. Another circumstance is with cruelty. You deliberately and inhumanly augment the suffering of the victim. Yun sa nimo, before no siya ipatay, imo siyang gihubuan, gipakaulawan, gibiduhan nimo during killing. O diba? Or imong giluwaan, imong gilabayag mga tayo. Anything, there is cruelty. Imo bang gihiktan og maayo. Diba? Kita ano mga salidang gihiktan ang kamot, pagkahuman, gilumsan-lumsan, gibiduhan, or cruelty, gipaulanan og bala. That's actually cruelty. And because of that, what you have committed is murder. So again, you have to consider that in order for a crime of murder to be committed, there must be first an unlawful killing. Second, the, the, the crime does not constitute infanticide or parricide, and that those circumstances that I have mentioned are actually present. So if those elements are there, then there is a crime of murder. Again, murder, unlawful killing, that is not infanticide, that is not parricide, and there are circumstances that are present, then those can be considered as murder. Okay? Homicide. Homicide, you have to consider that homicide is more or less same with murder, because both in homicide and murder, you have both killed a person. But what makes homicide different from murder? First, the first element of homicide is that the person was killed. A person was killed. You have killed a person. And that the second element is that the accused killed that person without any justifying circumstances. And what do you mean by justifying circumstances? There are a lot of justifying circumstances, but the most common justifying circumstances is self-defense. So when you're in the act of self-defense, because that person tried to kill you first and you're just defending yourself and you have killed that person, you are not actually considered to have committed homicide just because there's a justifying circumstances, because you are just trying to defend yourself because you are actually being killed. So, okay, because someone is trying to kill you, then you have defended yourself. But under homicide, there's no justifying circumstances present. So first, you have killed a person. Second is that there's no justifying circumstances that are present. The third elements of homicide is you have the intention to kill. So again, intention to kill. It's not by accident, but rather you have intention to kill that person. And the fourth one is that the killing has been committed without the attendance of circumstances that I have mentioned in murder. So that's what made it different. You have the intention to kill, but you just killed that person directly. So again, what makes homicide present? Let's see their element. First, homicide. What makes murder different from what makes homicide different from murder is that its element. First element is that a person was killed. Upon the killing of the accused, there are no justifying circumstances present. Third, there was indeed an intention to kill. But fourth element is that you have not the killing was not attended with any of the circumstances as I mentioned in the commission of murder. So, imo ra siyang ipatay gyud. Simple as that. Nakita ka niya, imo siyang gitigbas. You have the intention to kill. Pero, imo ra gidali siya tigbas. Wala siya attendant, wala nimo siya gigapos, wala nimo gigamitan og kalayo, wala nimo gilunod, you did not attend, you did not use cruelty, you did not ask the help from another person, wala nimo gibayran, you just want to kill that person and you have killed that person. That's homicide. So again, what makes it different from murder is that it is not attended with any of the circumstances as I have mentioned in the crime of murder. So you just have the intention to kill and you kill that person. That is homicide. Giving assistance to suicide. So under our laws, you are liable if you assist other person in the commission of suicide. So again, if someone will tell you, help me because I want to kill myself, and ikaw mo'y nagbutang sa higot, or ikaw mo'y nagpalit sa poison, gamit niya, or ikaw mo'y naglaslas niya, then you are giving assistance to the suicide of that person. Then you are liable, even if that person wants to kill himself and there's no crime. And you know, a person, you have to consider that there is no crime and there is no law punishing it. The thing is, a person who commits suicide cannot be liable of the suicide. But if you are assisting that person in in committing suicide, then you are liable. So again, you should not assist any person when they will tell you that they want to commit suicide, and you said, "Oh, go Rana, go. I'll help you." You are giving assistance in the commission of suicide, and that is punishable under our laws. So abortion, under our revised penal code, intentional abortion can be committed by any person. So what are the ways of committing intentional abortion? Under our laws, there are 3 ways. First, you have to consider, first way of committing it is you have used violence. And because of that violence, imuhang gibugbog, you have used violence against the person of a pregnant woman. And then as a result, abortion happened, then that's actually intentional abortion under our revised penal code. Another way of committing abortion is when, without violence and without the consent of the pregnant woman, but you have administered drugs or any beverages that would actually abort the baby. That's actually intentional abortion, and you will be liable under our revised penal code. The third way of committing an abortion is when you, with the consent of the pregnant woman, you have administered drug to her for you have assisted that pregnant woman so that the child will be aborted. You are liable of intentional abortion under our revised penal code. So you have to remember these elements. There's actually a pregnant woman, and that you have used violence, or without the use of violence, but you have administered drugs or any other beverages, and as a result of this violence or in the administering of these drugs and beverages, the baby was aborted. And the fourth one is the abortion was intentional. If these elements are present, then you are actually liable of intentional abortion under our revised penal code. Again, you have used violence or without use of violence, but you have administered drugs or any beverages that would cause the abortion of the woman, and this abortion is intentional, then you are liable of abortion under our laws. So for physical injuries, first you have to understand that under physical injuries, there must be no intention to kill. Again, we have to repeat. Under physical injuries, there must be no intention to kill. Because if there is intention to kill, then the crime would automatically become either frustrated or attempted homicide, or attempted murder, or frustrated homicide and frustrated murder. Again, under physical injuries, there must be no intention to kill. So, imuhang intention is bunugon rin nga person. So, how can physical injuries be committed? First, either by wounding, imong samaran, by beating, bunugon nimo, by assault, or by administering injurious substances. What do you mean administering injurious substances? Imong hiluan. Yung paimnon of something na makahiluan ng person. And when you commit all this, you must not have any intention to kill, because if you have intention to kill, then it means it's either attempted or frustrated homicide or attempted or frustrated murder. That's it. Okay, so there are two kinds of physical injuries. It's either serious physical injuries or less serious physical injuries. When you say serious physical injuries, this is when upon the commission of the physical injury, it's either the injured person becomes an imbecile, mabuang, or it becomes an imbecile or insane or impotent or blind, impotent, impotent, become blind as a consequences of this acts or of physical injuries. So if ever gani mabuang sila, mahimog moron, mahimog moron, or that mabuta, ma-impotent, di na mautog ilaha, or that or that they yes, kato. Or as a consequences, mabuta sila as a consequence of this physical injuries, then that is considered as serious physical injuries. Another one is it is also considered a serious physical injuries when the person loses his ability to speak. Di na siya kasturya. Or that his sense of smell mawala, or sense of taste, or loses an eye, mabuta siya. Then, maputlan siya kamot, maputlan siya tiil. Then, or that he becomes incapacitated. He does not have anymore the capacity to do the things that he's doing, most especially his work. Hindi na siya katrabaho just because he became incapacitated when during the infliction of physical injuries. Then that is still considered as serious physical injuries. Or then because of physical injuries, there is deformity. And under our laws, on some resulting deformity, there is physical ugliness, permanent abnormality. Physical ugliness, of course, you know what happens when there is physical ugliness, or that permanent or definite abnormality. And it is visible to a lot of people. Makita, kaya ang abnormalities yung naong or kaniyang ugliness is visible to a lot of people. Then that is considered as serious physical injuries, or that where he is incapacitated or is not allowed to work for more than 30 days but less than 90 days. More than 30 days but not more than 90 days. He is not for less than 30 days and not more than 90 days. He's not allowed, he cannot work because of these physical injuries. Then that is considered as serious physical injuries. However, when you say less serious, there's actually less serious physical injuries. It's when a person, the person nga inyo, the crime has been committed to, or the victim of physical injuries is not able to work for more than 10 days, but not more than 30 days. So 10 days to 30 days. If he cannot work, then that is less serious physical injuries. And the physical and under less serious physical injuries, those circumstances present in the serious physical injuries is not attendant. So wala na siya nabuta, wala siya naputlan og kamot, wala siya incapacitated to work, or there's no deformity, then that is considered as less serious physical injuries. So under physical injuries, you have to remember that you have just to remember that first, there must be an inability to work. Dili siya katrabaho. And that inability to work requires medical attendance. So, requires siya medical help. Then that is considered as physical injuries. But you have to consider kung pila siya ka days dili ka work. If more than 10 days but less than 30 days, then that is less serious physical injuries. If more than 30 days but less than 90 days, then that is serious physical injuries. If mabuta na gani siya, mabuang, mawad ag senses, maputlan og kamot, ma-impotent, ma-deform, yung naong ma-deform, then that is serious physical injuries. That's what we need to remember. So now we'll be talking about rape, and for me, I think rape is one of the most sensitive topic you can talk about. However, I think all of you are more than 18 years old, so let's talk about some mature things, because this is actually very important. Rape is actually very important for you to know what is rape, okay? So under our law, under the revised penal code, which was then, this law has actually been then amended. Under our laws, rape can be committed by there are two ways to commit rape. The first kind of rape, there are two kinds of rape actually. The first kind of rape is actually rape by sexual intercourse. And what do you mean by sexual intercourse? It's when a man will have a carnal knowledge with a woman against her will. And when you say carnal knowledge, there is insertion of penis in the vagina. So there's sexual intercourse. But you have to consider that under our revised penal code, if there is a man who will have a carnal knowledge with a woman without her consent or against her will, then that is considered as rape through sexual intercourse. So under the rape through sexual intercourse, it can only be committed by a man against a woman. So are transgender women or trans women, can they be raped through sexual intercourse? No, under our laws, no. Trans women cannot be raped by a man. Under our laws, trans women cannot be raped by a man because rape can only be committed by a man against a woman. So for first kind of rape, that's rape through sexual intercourse. So a man will have a carnal knowledge with a woman against her will. That is rape through sexual intercourse. What's the second type of rape? The second type of rape is rape through sexual assault. And that is what is when there is insertion of penis, a man's penis, to the mouth or the anal orifice of the woman, or that an object has been inserted in the genitalia or the anal orifice of the woman, or actually not just a woman but a man. Rape through sexual intercourse can actually be committed not just by a man but also a woman, and can be committed against a man and a woman. So again, rape through sexual intercourse can only be committed by a man to a woman, but rape through sexual assault can be committed by either a man and a woman, and can be committed against a man and a woman. So again, when you say rape through sexual assault, there's insertion of penis in the mouth of the woman or another man, or there's insertion of penis in the mouth and the anal orifice of the person, and that there's an insertion of an object. It's either fingers, fingers can be inserted to the genitalia or the anal orifice of the offended party or the victim. So that's a rape through sexual assault. So what are the circumstances present for an act to be considered as rape? First, it's when through force, intimidation, or threat. There's force, there's threat, there's intimidation. That's actually a present circumstances that would constitute rape. Second is when the woman or the victim loses consciousness or without reasons, di na siya ka-move, so gihubog og maayo, you drag that person, then that circumstances would constitute rape. And then by any other means of fraudulent machinations or through grave abuse of authority, so you are using your authority, then that is actually rape. And rape is actually all acts of sexual intercourse with a woman 12 years old or below. All acts are actually considered rape. So when there is a woman and she is 12 years old or below or younger, then that is rape. Or if the person is demented, buang, then that is also rape. So those are the circumstances that would consider rape. Again, automatically when you have a sex with a woman or a girl that is 12 years old, regardless if there is consent by the girl, that is automatically rape. Or that if you have sex with a demented woman or nabuang, and that is considered rape. Or when you try to lose the consciousness of that person, or she's without any reasons, beyond her reasons, kay inyo nang gidrag, inyo nang gihubog, then that is considered as rape. That is circumstances that would constitute rape, or that there is force, threat, or intimidation. Those are the circumstances which would constitute rape. So what are the elements of rape? So first, let's talk about rape through sexual intercourse. When you say rape through sexual intercourse, it's element first. The offender is a man, the offended party is a woman, and that the following are present. There is force or intimidation, and the woman is deprived of her reason, or deprived of her reason or consciousness, and that or that there is fraudulent machination, or that there is actually grave abuse of authority. So gigamit iyang authority, it's either kay boss siya or someone powerful, or that the woman is 12 years old or below or younger, or that the woman is demented. That is considered as rape through sexual intercourse. And for the elements of rape through sexual assault, first, the offender commits an act of sexual assault. So unsa man to, there's insertion of penis in the mouth or the anal orifice, or insertion of object in the genitalia or in the anal orifice. And then another is the sexual assault is committed in any circumstances, as I mentioned earlier, when there's force, threat, or intimidation, the offended party is deprived of reason, or is unconscious, or lost his or her consciousness, or that the victim is 12 years old or below or demented, then that is considered as rape through sexual assault. So I said, again, rape can be committed either by rape through sexual intercourse or rape through sexual assault. So you have to consider that. And again, once you become teachers, you have to be careful of your minor students, most especially if you're handling elementary students, just because those children who would have sexual intercourse or who would have carnal knowledge with any man, if they are just 12 years old or they are younger, then that is already considered rape, regardless if that girl would give her consent. Ihamon na siya murasing, ako man ang uyab. Just because. You have to consider it's also rape kasi mag-uyab pa mo. But there's no consent. Kay because ki-rape, imo siyang gihubog. Or nakuyapan imuhang uyab, or imong gituyo nga ma-loss ang consciousness sa imong uyab. The act, even if uyab mo and you have carnal knowledge, that the fact that you have carnal knowledge with your girlfriend, and that, but because she did not give any consent, just because napugos ra siya or she was deprived of her reason or consciousness, then that is considered rape. Again, your relationship should not be considered, cannot be considered as a defense in the crime of rape. However, in the extinguishment of criminal liability, there is this very interesting, and I don't know why, even until now, it's still accepted. There's an accepted way of extinguishing criminal liability in rape, and that is when a woman would allow herself to marry her rapist. Again, if a woman will marry the man who raped her, then the liability, the criminal liability of the man would extinguish. Dili na siya liable, dili na siya mapriso, just because the woman agreed to marry him. So I don't think that that's a very good I don't think that's a very good provision. It is something that our lawmakers should look upon, just because I don't think marrying the man who raped you, marrying a man who would rape you, that's very absurd, and his criminal liability be extinguished just because you marry him. That's very absurd. That should be amended already under our laws, because we women should not be, you know, because that says a lot about men. You know, you have to understand that when you woman or a girl is very weak, and a man will take advantage of your weakness just because at the time you lost consciousness, you know, that says a lot about the morality of that person, and you still decided to marry that person, and because of that act of marrying him, he lost his criminal liability and he would not be imprisoned anymore. That's actually very absurd. That's actually one of our concerns in our law here in the Philippines, you know. Even until now, that provision is very much alive and it's very much practiced. If a rapist would marry and the woman would allow to marry a rapist, you know, that would extinguish criminal liability, and that's not good, because, you know, it says a lot about the morality of the man, of a person, and men should know how to respect women regardless, you know, if they lost their consciousness, if they lost everything, they should try to respect women. So yeah, that's all for rape. Okay. Kidnapping. I think you are quite familiar with kidnapping, given that it is often seen in the television programs. But when we say kidnapping under our laws, what are the elements in the crime of kidnapping? First, the offender is a private person. Again, private person. And that the private person is not actually the mother or the father of the child, nor a female. O, diba? Specific. The provision of the law is very specific. Again, the person who kidnapped, the person accused of kidnapping is a private person, and that person is actually not the parents of the child nor a female. Then another element of this crime is that he kidnaps or detains this child. So there must be deprivation of liberty. There must be deprivation of liberty. That's the second element. And the third element, the kidnapping or the detention is illegal. Nanong illegal man? Just because under our laws, a person can be deprived of liberty legally when you have, you know, warrant of arrest. If you have legal warrant of arrest, then that is allowed. But under our law, under this law, illegal siya, illegal ang deprivation of liberty just because you kidnapped the child. And that in the commission, the following circumstances, there must be these circumstances to be present. There is the detention lasts, the kidnapping or detention would last for more than 3 days. So nakapinog 3 days, then these private persons are simulating that they are officers of the government, or that they are police officers, and that they have inflicted serious physical injuries to the victim, and that the person or the victim has been deprived of liberty. Then if those circumstances are present, then there is kidnapping. Most especially, this kidnapping is actually qualified when qualified kidnapping. It will turn into qualified kidnapping is if the victim is raped, or there is extortion for ransom, or that the victim has been tortured or subjected to some dehumanizing act, dehumanizing act, or any acts that are considered inhumane. If these acts are present, then that is qualified kidnapping. But if these acts are not present, and that the child has been deprived of liberty, or the person has just been deprived of liberty for more than 3 days, then that is kidnapping under our laws. The second part here is the failure to return a minor. So that is actually when you failure to return a minor is actually a crime under our law. So when is failure to return a minor committed? That is when a person has the custody of a child, and we say a child, under our laws, a child or a minor must be below 18 years old, and that person has been given custody of the child, and the person who has custody of the child will deliberately fail to return that child to the parents, then that is considered as failure to return a minor. You as teachers, eventually you'll be handling students. And your students, almost all of them are actually minors because they can be elementary or high school, or some senior high students even are still minors. You actually have the custody. You actually have a custody over these children because they are under your authority as teachers. So you are expected by parents to have the custody of these children, but eventually you decided that you don't want to return these children, your students. You deliberately, or you have the intention to not return the students to their parents. So you hide them. You actually hide these children. You are actually, if you do that act, then you will be liable for failure to return a minor under our laws. Again, failure to return a minor. It's quite different from kidnapping. Again, because you have been given custody, so proper custody of this child, and you are expected to return the child to the parents, but you deliberately did not return the child to their parents. So, are you considered? Will you be considered as liable for committing the crime or the felony of failure to return a minor? Yes, you are. Again, you are actually liable for it. Okay. Abandonment. You have to consider abandonment under your revised penal code. Abandonment is actually committed by a person having the custody of a child. So, you must have a custody of the child. It's either tita, tito, or ikaw ang yaya, or in fact, parents. And the thing is, the child is below 7 years old. The child is below 7 years old. And you deliberately abandon the child. Imong gibiyaan ani adto mo ani nga lugar, imo siyang gibiyaan ani sa mall. Deliberate yung pagbiya sa bata. Deliberate yung pagbiya sa parke, sa asapan na siya ni magibiyaan ang child. But you have no intention to kill the child. It's just that you want to abandon the child because you don't like the child. If ever those elements are present, then you are liable for abandonment or abandoning a minor under the revised penal code. But there are still abandonment that is also being punished under the revised penal code, and that is abandonment of persons in danger or abandonments of one's victim. So basically, when you fail to render assistance to any person whom the offender finds in an uninhabited place, so wala ka po anong lugar, and that person is wounded or in danger or in dying, or maka-render ang assistance, but you can render assistance without detriment. So you can render assistance pero dili nimo wala po danger sa imo when you help that person, kaya wala na dira ang gapatay or try og injure another person, but still you chose not to help that person. That is actually considered as abandonment of persons in danger, and because of that, kay mo rin na siyang gibiyaan, even if you have the means to help that person, then you are liable under our revised penal code. So again, if you see a person injured and you can help, you have all the means to help that person, and you are not endangered, if you will help that person, then you will be liable if you will abandon that person. So you must help. Exploitation of minors. So exploitation of minor of child labor. This is actually under our laws. First, you have to consider for exploitation of minors for child labor. First, you have to consider that this crime can be committed once a person will retain a child under her service. So, iyan patrabahoon ang child, a minor. And that service, the employment or the service of a child is against the will of the child. It's against the will of the child. And that service under the pretext that the child is, the service of the child is for the payments of debts of the guardians or the parents of this child. So gihimo, gigamit ang bata, gipa-labor, gipa-enter into child labor just to pay the debts, ang utang, just to pay the utang of the parents or the guardian of the child. Under our revised penal code, that is actually considered as exploitation of child labor or exploitation of minors, and that is very punishable under the revised penal code. Again, if you would allow a child to work for you, and that is against the will of the child, and that is because the service of the child is because the parents or the guardian of the child has a debt to pay, then that is very much punishable under our laws. So for threats, there are actually two kinds of threats. We have grave threats and we have light threats. For grave threats, it can be committed first either by threatening a person in the infliction of his person, his honor, or his property. When you say infliction, yung pasakitan or yung daoton siya as a person, iyang honor, or iyang daoton yung iyang property. And that this threat is actually, the threat is would constitute a crime, and that you know, there's demand for money, so there's actually a condition, so that's actually considered as grave threat. So again, it can be committed when you say hulgaon ka, hulga. So when you say threats, hulga ra niya, because when you say threats, it's more on less verbal lang siya, because if you threat a person and you really did commit those crimes, then you'll be liable for the crime that you have committed and not for threats. So that's why manghulga ra gani ka gani. That's also the other part of threats. So for example, for grave threats, first is either imo siyang hulgaon nga imong daoton iyang pangalan as a person, or iyang dignidad, iyang honor, or any of his property, and that he would ask money in return for it. So ano kaniya, gaay ko kwarta or gaay ko gingani. He has stipulated certain conditions. Kaya if dili niya buhaton, then if dili ni ko nimuhan ni buhaton, then I'll do this or something like that. And you know, the threats would constitute a crime, pero there is no attaining purposes. Wala na-attain ang purpose sa offender. Then that is actually a case of grave threat. So the person who's doing that is liable for grave threats, or even if without conditions, but still gihulga ra gyapon mo sa anang a person this infliction, there's threat of infliction the honor, the person, or the property of another person, then that is still considered as grave threats. So again, you have to consider that in threats hulga ra ni kutob, there really is no attaining of the purpose of the offender, just because nanghulga ra gyud siya. So that's when you are considered as liable for grave threats. However, for light threats, so that's for grave threats. For light threats, what are its for its elements? First, there makes a threat to commit a wrong. So na siya buhaton commit a wrong, and that wrong does not constitute a crime, and there is a demand for money or other condition imposed even if dili lawful tong iyang buhaton, then that is actually considered as light threats. So what are examples of light threats? Ana siya nga akong gub-on ning inyong oral. Pero actually, if imong gub-on, that's actually malicious mischief naman dahil na, no, if imong gub-on ang koral. Let's just say, sabiagan ti kag tubig, hindi ko ni mga kwarta. Under our law, sabiagan ng tubig, that does not constitute a crime. So, sabiagan ko ning tubig, or ako ning sunugon imong sanina, kung di ko ni mga kwarta, that's actually considered as light threat. So again, there is a threat to commit a wrong, and that wrong does not constitute a crime, and money, or there's a condition imposed, or there's a demand imposed for the commission of the threat and there's attainment of purpose, then that is considered as light threat under our laws. Again, we have grave threats. Under the grave threats, the threats must constitute a crime, but there's no attaining of purpose. And there is still a condition, whether there is a condition or not, as long as the threat would constitute a crime, then that is part of grave threats. For light threats, there is a threat to commit a wrong, but that wrong does not constitute a crime. And there is still a demand for any condition, and that under life threats there is attainment of purpose by the offender, then that is considered as light threats. So again, we have grave threats and light threats. Theft. So let's talk about theft. So under theft, first, they must be taking of personal property. So what I can say personal property is yung mga cellphone, pitaka, yung mga laptop. There's actually taking of personal property, and that property, the property that you have taken, is the property of another person, and you have the intention to gain. Again, you need the intention to gain. And then when you took the property, it is without the consent of the owner. Okay, imo lang kuha. But without the use of force, threat, or intimidation, then that is considered as theft. Again, under theft, you must have the intention to gain, and that under theft too, there must be a taking of personal property. The property belongs to another person, and that you took the property without the consent of the other person, and there must be no use of force or violence. That is considered theft, because once there is use of force and violence, that is not theft anymore. That is considered as robbery. So under theft, kwaon ra nimo siya. Di nimo gubon ang balay. Kung ang bintana, di ka mambuak ng bintana, di ka magamit og kutsilyo, or di ka magamit og pusil, di nimo tuunan ang pusil, imo ra yung kwaon ra gyud. That is theft. Kaya once magamit to ina na ng pusil, gamitan na nimo kutsilyo, mangbuak na kag property, that is considered as robbery, and that's actually a crime worse than theft. So under theft, mangawat simple nga kawat, that's theft. Pero once there is use of threat, force, and intimidation, then that is considered as robbery anymore. Again, if imo ang kwaon, the important element of theft is the intention to gain, intent to gain. Because imo ra nga kuha kay tungod na nakuha na nimo just because na nalimot ka, or you don't have any intention at all, na nakuha na nimo because lutang kay ka nang a moment. If you don't have any intention to gain, you have no intent to gain, and you just took it, that is not actually considered as theft. Pero if there really is intention to gain, then that is theft. So now we have come to adultery and concubinage. So this can actually be committed when you are already married. So when you say adultery, there's actually adultery and concubinage are two very different laws. Because under adultery can only be committed by a woman, a married woman, who has sexual intercourse with a man, not her husband. And that the man whom she had sexual intercourse with will only be liable if that man is aware that she is a married woman. So under adultery, the first person who is liable for this is actually a married woman. A married woman who would have sexual intercourse with a man who is not her husband. And that the man is also liable if he knew that that woman is a married woman. So for adultery to be committed, a married woman must have sexual intercourse with a man other than her husband. And it's very, very different from concubinage, because under concubinage, who is liable under concubinage is a married man. However, there are very strict circumstances that should be followed or should be present for a married man, to be considered guilty of concubinage. First, a man must have sexual intercourse. A married man will have a sexual intercourse with a woman, not his wife, under scandalous circumstances. And when I say scandalous circumstances, do things there and there. Basta scandalous circumstances. It is not enough that a married man will have sexual intercourse with a woman, not his wife. It is not enough that they will just have sexual intercourse. The sexual intercourse must be attended with scandalous circumstances before that act can be considered as concubinage. So again, it is committed by a married man and a woman. It is committed by a married man, and with a woman who knows that that man is married. However, under this act, again, if a man will just have a married man will just have a sexual intercourse with a woman, not his wife, then that is not considered as concubinage, because a sexual intercourse must be attended with scandalous circumstances before it can be guilty of concubinage. Another circumstances attendant with concubinage is that there must be cohabitation. So gapuyo, that is when there is concubinage. Gapuyo na ang married man of another woman, not his wife, or that they would actually present under their cohabitation, they will act as husband and wife, even if the man is married with another woman. That's only the time that there is a crime of concubinage. It's very so. Under this law, it's actually quite unfair, because under this law, women are less protected, given that sa adultery, a married woman, once gani makipag sexual intercourse na siya with a man, not her wife and not her husband, then she is already considered guilty of adultery. However, for concubinage with a married man, there needs to be the sexual intercourse must be under scandalous circumstance, and that is very much that is actually very unfair, actually. But that is because you have to remember that our laws are created by the Congress, and most members of the Congress are men. Mga congressmen nato, there are more congressmen than congresswomen, and there are more men members of the Senate than women. And because of that, some laws are actually quite unfair for women. So we have to consider that. And I think adultery and concubinage is something that, again, our lawmakers should look into, and they should consider this law to be amended already. Acts of lasciviousness. Acts of lasciviousness. When you say lasciviousness, acts of lasciviousness, it is when first you have to consider that there is no intention of rape, or there is no intention of having sexual intercourse with a woman under acts of lasciviousness. Because once there is intention to have sexual intercourse or to have carnal knowledge with a woman under acts of lasciviousness, then that is already considered as frustrated or attempted crime of rape. However, in acts of lasciviousness, there is no intention to have sexual intercourse. But the thing is, there is intention to have body or physical contact. There must be physical contact to the body of another person for sexual gratification. Sexual gratification, para maka-feel siya glami, o diba? Or to satisfy sexual hunger for at the time. But there's no actually intention to have sexual intercourse with the person. So under our laws, if that person would attempt or would attempt a physical contact to touch the body of a person for for sexual gratification, then that is already considered as acts of lasciviousness. So, if na yung mga laki, girls, you have to remember, if na yung mga laki, magikap-hikap ninyo hikapon yung dere, or will do something, bagid-bagid ang ilang parts, ilang body, sa inyong boobs, inyong lubot, or other parts of your genitalia. Or, you know, that is actually considered as act of lasciviousness, and you must feel violated with that. If na yung mag-chancing ninyo, even if friend rin na ninyo, that is actually a violation of your physical space. And because of that, they must be considered as liable for acts of lasciviousness. Again, nasa physical contact. They want, under acts of lasciviousness, there's attempt for physical contact for sexual gratification. So sometimes there's circumstances that present, there must be force or intimidation, and they're deprived. Sometimes the offended party is deprived of reason, and there's fraudulent machination, or that the offended party is actually below 12 years old. So again, the circumstances is actually more or less the same with rape. Pero under the act of lasciviousness, there's no intention to have sexual intercourse. Okay? Hikap-hikap ra, koot-koot ra, pero walay sexual intercourse na tabo. Pero if mukoot na gani and then insert finger in the genitalia or anal orifice, then that is already considered as rape through sexual assault. Pero sa gawas ra gani hikap-hikap ra grouping, na diri chancing, then that is already considered as act of lasciviousness. Again, in the act of lasciviousness, there's no intention to have sexual intercourse, only to attempt for body or physical contact for sexual gratification. Now we have come to seduction and corruption of minors. First, let's talk about seduction. So, seduction, more or less seduction, under seduction, there is sexual intercourse, or there is carnal knowledge. But the thing is, under the crime of seduction, what makes it different from rape is that the sexual intercourse is actually the sexual intercourse is actually consented. So the victim gave her consent for the sexual intercourse. However, what makes it different is that there are circumstances in seduction that are not present in rape. First, seduction can be committed against a virgin. So we have to know the elements of seduction. First, it must be the offended party must be a virgin, and that second is that she must be over 12 years old but less than 18 years old. So minor gyapon, consented sexual intercourse with a minor. Consented sexual intercourse with a minor. That is seduction. So basically, if she is more than 12 years old but less than 18 years old, that is considered seduction. So again, the first circumstances is that she is a virgin. Second is that she is more than 12 years old but younger, less than 18 years old, and that the offender had sexual intercourse with her, and there is abuse of authority or confidence, or there's abuse of authority or confidence with the relationship of the offender. And why is that so? Who are liable? Actually, there is seduction when the consent in the giving of, there is seduction when there is abuse of authority for the getting of the consent from the minor child. So basically, those persons who are an authority, and teachers are actually considered as persons in authority, the guardians, and persons who are guardians, and then those persons who are entrusted with the custody to the child. Again, persons in authority, the teachers, the guardians, and those who have custody of the child. And they will abuse the authority that has been given to them just to get the consent of that minor child to have sex with them. Then that is seduction. Again, under seduction, there is consent, but the consent is being given by a minor child, and that consent has been obtained through abuse of powers of or the authority of the person getting the consent or with offender. And teachers are actually one of those enumerated under our laws to be teachers are one of those enumerated under our laws to be liable for seduction. Again, once you become teachers, especially if may mga laki ani nga class, once you become teachers and you fall in love with your minor students, even, and then yung gigamit imong authority to obtain the consent of the child to have sexual intercourse with the child, then you are liable for seduction. You are liable for seduction. You have to remember that. Okay? For corruption of minors, this is actually very interesting. For corruption of minors, this has been already amended, but still it's still under the revised penal code. This is a prohibited act under corruption of minors is now to facilitate the prostitution or corruption of the age to satisfy a lust. So again, if you facilitate the prostitution of a minor, then that is considered as corruption of minors. Or you facilitate the lust to have in sexual intercourse with a minor child or a person underage, then that is still considered as corruption of minors. Again, please wait until you are of age. Simulation of birth. When you say simulation of birth, you simulate ang birth certificate. So, an act that is punishable under simulation of births is that naay bata, di mo anak, pero upon registration for the birth certificate of a child, imong gibutang imong pangalan as the parent of the child. So basically, ganahan ka nga imuhang ang kuno ng bata. That is actually considered a simulation of birth, and under our law, that is very much punishable under the revised penal code. Again, simulation of birth, imuhang gibutang imong pangalan as parent of the child in the birth certificate of a child. So that is a punishable act under this crime. Now, for bigamy, you have to consider first, there must be a legal, valid marriage. We'll be talking more about marriage once we reach the civil code. So first, there must be a valid marriage. Second is that marriage has not been dissolved, so wala sa nagbulag. Legally, they're still binded with each other through that marriage. The third element is that the person who is who's contracted this marriage has married another person, and that marriage, during that marriage, all the valid requisites for a marriage, all the valid requisites for a formal marriage is present. So that's when bigamy is committed. So again, nag-asawa siya, wala sa nakipagbulag, pero nakipagminyo siya glain, and then valid po ang ilahang pagminyo. Requisites for a marriage to be valid is present in the contracted second marriage, then that is considered as bigamy under our laws. And because of that, that person must be punished under the revised penal code. So here, libel. Let's talk about libel, because there's actually a very much a crime that has been committed always. So for libel, first you have to consider that there must be an imputation of a crime. So gipasanginlan ka himuan kag istorya that you have committed a crime, imputation of a crime, or any vice or defect against you. So gipasangilan ka doing something or naay problema nimo. And that second is that this imputation must be made publicly. So gipublic siya. There is publication. Third is that there is malice. Malisyoso pagkabuhat kay ganahan na sila. There is malice. And why is there is malice? Because that's the fourth element is to destroy or dishonor you, dauton imong dignidad or your honor. And that person is directed to a person or sa imuha. Then a crime of libel has been committed. Again, if naay mangdaot sa imuhang reputation by pasanginlan ka for committing a crime, and then ilahang gipublicize na nga pagdaot nimo, like gamit nila ang Facebook, gamit nila ang newspaper, gamit nila ang TV, gamit nila ang radio, or anything nga daghang tao makabalo. And malicious kay siya. Klaro kay malicious. When you say malicious, ang ilang purpose is magdaot ra nimo, daoton ka. Whether that the crime or the imputation is real or not, that person is still guilty of libel. Again, if those circumstances are present, then you are liable for libel because under our laws, di unta ka dapat mangdaot sa reputation of other people. And once you do that, you are liable for libel. So now we have come to Republic Act number 9344 as amended by Republic Act 10630. Or this is actually called the Juvenile Justice and Welfare System. So this we are already done with the revised penal code, and now we are here with some special penal laws. And this is actually very much important, especially you teachers, because you will be handling some minors. Under this law, we have defined a child. A child is anyone who is below 18 years old, or even if he's already 18 years old, but he's not capable of taking care of himself, given that he is an imbecile or nasa problema sa iyang pangutok, then that person is still considered a child under our laws. And under this, the Juvenile Justice and Welfare System Act, under this law, first you have to consider that you don't call children as criminals, because children, they cannot be considered as criminal. In fact, we call them as child with conflict with laws. And when you say child with conflict with laws, they are children who are accused of or to have committed a crime. So basically, under this law, we have put an age to criminal liability. For criminal liability under this law, children below 15 years old, or those child that are below 15 years old, they do not incur any criminal liability. So 15 years old. But if they are already 15 years old, more than 15 years old, but less than 18 years old, that's the time, or they are more than 15 years old but less than 18 years old, and they acted without discernment. So without discernment, so meaning wala silang pagbuot, wala pa sila buot, and they have committed a crime, then they will be subject to the custody to the Department of Social Welfare and Development, Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, and they should be immediately released to their parents or to their guardians. If ever it will find out that these children who have committed a crime, this 15 years old and up, or 15 years old, more than 15 years old but less than 18 years old, but once the DSWD will find out that these children are actually abandoned, then the SWD will actually take custody of them. So again, there are still children who are 15 years old, more than 15 years old, but less than 18 years old, but acted without discernment or wala silang pagbuot, then they still don't incur any criminal liability. However, for children who are 15, more than 15 years old, but less than 18 years old, and when they committed a crime, they acted with discernment. And we say with discernment, nanas lang po, this at their will. So, sila mismo ang nibuhat na nga crime mo. At their own discernment, silang pagbuot. Then, they will be taken into custody and they will be undergoing into a diversion program. They will be taken into a diversion program without, but they will not experience any more criminal, court proceedings, just because children below 18 years old are still, although they incur criminal liability, but they are not supposed to be imprisoned. They should not be put into a prison because that is their right. Children with those children who are these children in conflict with laws have their rights still, and they should not be put into prison, but rather they must undergo diversion programs that would be these diversion programs would be under the local DSWD, or the local Social Welfare and Development Office, and they would be deciding as to what kind of diversion program they would be given to a child. So basically, that child will not be imprisoned. Again, no child should be imprisoned under this law. So again, under this law, the most important fact is that our children must not be imprisoned for committing a crime even if they acted with discernment, because if they acted with discernment, they should undergo a diversion program and they should not be subjected to any court proceeding under this law. So again, the age of criminal responsibility under our law is 15 years old. So now we have come to the Republic Act number 9165, or the Act instituting the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002. So under this law, what is prohibited is the selling, the using of, and other acts. That is, it has prohibited the selling and the using of drugs, and it has also provided for the processor or the chain of commands as to how to apprehend those people who had been found in the use or selling or trafficking drugs. And let's not really deal into this law any deeper, because it's very complicated and there are a lot of agencies that are connected to it, and let's leave this to our law students and our police officers, those people working in our courts. But we have to understand under this law that families and schools and teachers have actually obligations under this law. So first, under this law, families are obligated to raise awareness to their family members as to the ill effects of drugs. That's it. Another one is schools, student councils, and campus organizations are also obliged under this law to create activities that would raise awareness on drug use, on the prohibited drug use. And then also, this law has also mandated that in our school curriculum, under our school curriculum, schools are actually mandated to integrate in our school curriculum the adverse effects of drugs, and what are the things that you can do, the preventive measures, what are the things that you can do in order to prevent drug use, and what are the steps that are created, or what are the steps that would serve as intervention for those, would create steps that would serve as intervention for students so that they would not be addicted to the use of these substances as defined under this law. And then, there should be schools, in the schools, there should be more awareness activities and information drive that would actually educate the children as to the ill effects of drugs. So basically, schools and teachers and student councils and student organizations are actually mandated to do something so that children would not be lured into the use of drugs. And the thing is, teachers, under this law, teachers, heads, school heads, and supervisors are actually considered as persons and authority. And what are their obligations under this law? Under this law, teachers can actually apprehend and arrest. Again, they can apprehend and arrest any person who shall violate the provisions of this law, more specifically on drug use and on selling. So if ever in the vicinity, you have to consider that you, teacher, will only be considered as person's authority when you are already in schools or within your vicinity. So within the vicinity of the school, you would see someone who would be selling drugs to the minor children, to our children. You actually have the obligation first to report to the authorities, to report them to our authorities of these violations that have been committed by the persons. And also you have the obligation to apprehend those persons who have committed it, and at the same time arrest. If you will find someone selling drugs within the school vicinity, you are considered as a person of authority under this law, then you can actually arrest that person selling drugs within the vicinity of your school. That's the authority, or that's the power given to teachers, head teachers, supervisors, or head supervisors or teachers. That's actually the power that has been granted to them under this law. So you can actually well apprehend and arrest those persons, or cause the arrest, or cause the apprehension. So meaning makatawag, you can actually call the police and magpatabang mo to arrest that person. You can actually do that because you are mandated to do that under our law, under this law. So we have here Republic Act 9208 as amended by RA 10364, and this is an act that to eliminate trafficking in persons, especially women and children. So under this law, we need to stop human trafficking. And what is human trafficking? That is when you recruit, you obtain, you hire, you provide, or offering transportation or transfer, maintaining, harboring, or receive of persons without the consent of that person for sexual exploitation, for forced labor or services, for slavery, for servitude, or for sales of removal or sale of organs. So again, under this law, we must protect our children and women from being trafficked. When you say traffic, kikuha sila. They are being recruited, and they are recruited to work when in fact, ang ilang work is to become they have to go into forced labor, they have to undergo sexual exploitation, himuon silang exploit sila to become prostitutes, or these children are being sent away to other places just for their organs to be removed kay baligya. That should not be happening in our country. In fact, there is also sexual exploitation, online sexual exploitation, when parents force their children na maghubo-hubo online. That's actually a form of trafficking. Or kanang mail-to-order bride, kanang online, ipadala ni nga babae kay tungod ganahan ang isa kalaki sa iya, and that the foreigner would want to marry that child, to marry that woman. That's actually a form of trafficking. Mail-to-order, that's not good actually. So that's actually one of the acts that are being punished under this law. So again, trafficking, this law, the purpose of this law is to eliminate trafficking in persons, most especially to women and children. And another act that is prohibited under this law is that kanang adopted gani. There we have intercountry adoption here in the Philippines, wherein foreigners would adopt a Filipino child. But the thing is, i-adopt for the purpose of exploiting or trafficking this child. That's actually being punished under this law kanang adoption for the purpose of trafficking a child. No, that's punishable under this act. So again, we must eliminate trafficking of persons, most especially women and children. So now we have come to Republic Act number 9775, or an act defining the crime of child pornography. So under this law, we have to consider, under this law, it's not only those parents or those who will induce a child to enter into pornography to be liable, because the internet service providers or ISPs are also liable under this crime. So what are the crimes that or the unlawful or prohibited laws under, or unlawful acts under this law? First, to hire, employ, or persuade children, or to induce or to force a child, pugson ang child to perform in the creation or production of pornography. So again, gipugos nimo ang child to perform in a pornographic film. That is prohibited under this law. Second, to produce, direct, or manufacture, create any form of child pornography. Again, mo produce, maghimo kag child pornography video. That is unlawful under this law. Then to publish, transmit, sell, distribute, broadcast, advertise, or under this law, actually everyone can be liable under this law, under this provision. First, if kani i-publish, imurang dili mo siya ibaligya, pero ikaw kanang usom laron sa mga GC, mga group chats nga magpakatag og mga scandals. And if ever ikaw mo'y usas gapakatag, you transmit, you distribute, even if dili mo ibaligya, per selling is also you are liable when you sell this child pornography videos. Pero once gani you transmit or you sell or you distribute something, or imo i-share, once magpakatag ka og video of a child of a porn video with a child involved with it, or child pornography, you are already liable under this. So basically, kanang mga group chat unta nga na yung mga bata, na yung mga videos ng mga bata, mga minors engaging into sex. Under this law, you are liable. And in fact, under this law, prohibited magani ang to possess of any form of child pornography. So meaning, bisan wala niyo nagpakatag, pero imo na nag-save sa imong cellphone, you are still liable for child pornography under this law. Then, another prohibited act is to provide a venue for the commission of child pornography. Even if but you must know and willingly and intentionally provide, nihatag ka og venue for this child pornography. Again, you are still liable. Also, you grooming a child. So you have been taking care of this child just because you want the child to enter into child pornography. Grooming, imong gi-groom ng bata, that you are still liable. Again, and those film distributors or theaters or telecommunication companies nga they would cooperate in the distribution of child pornography. Again, they are liable for it. And parents and guardians who would actually permit a child, suptan niya ang bata, panangin ang bata, and then they will permit the child to engage in child pornography, then you are actually very much liable. And then if you have access, if you like watching child pornography videos, you are liable for it. And again, even a mere possession of a child pornography video, mga sex scandals involving a child, or these sex videos involving children, you are liable. Again, you are very much liable. These acts are very much liable because children should be protected and should not be subjected to engage in any sexual activities, much more to be put into video and to be distributed to other people. So the mere possession of these, or kind of distribute, mga magpakatag ka ng mga videos, you are very much liable under this law. So we have Republic Act 9262, or otherwise known as the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act of 2004, or VAUSI. Okay, just a very, very brief summary under this law. First, you have to understand that there are several types of abuses that can be committed against women and children, and these types of abuses are all it's what we are trying to stop under VAUSI, and we are protecting women from any kinds of abuses under this. So first, we are not just under this law, we're not talking about physical abuse, so meaning kinangilabon og sige, but also we're also talking about sexual violence. When you say sexual violence, rape. There is rape between husband and wife. There is rape when a woman does not give her consent. And the thing is, there are husbands nga mamugos sige to have sexual intercourse with his wife. And under our laws, it's actually considered a form of abuse, and that is already a form of rape. So women are being protected under this law. And another form of violence is psychological violence or psychological abuse. When you say psychological abuse, wala lagi siya gipasakitan, wala siya ginapasig physically gipasakitan, pero yaw-yawan, tawag mo siyang pistika, buang ka, kung sa nila isulti, verbal abuse. There is psychological violence with that, because imong gipagamay ang esteem, imong gikuhaan og confidence ang woman. Ginaingnan nimo sige siyang hindi ka pirik mo buhat ani kay you're not enough, di ba? So eventually your wife or that woman would eventually think that she is not enough anymore, and because of that, it would affect her psychologically and her emotional state, and that is psychological violence, and the VAUSI, this law is also trying to protect a woman from that. And then here, we're also talking about economic abuse. Unsa man economic abuse? That's when a man nga naa siya responsibility for a family, mustap siya hatag og sustento, di siya pakanon ng mga bata, di siya matag og kwarta for food to sustain anang pang-eskwela sa mga bata, to stop giving kanang mga sustento sa family. That's part of economic abuse, and that is being punished under VAUSI. And what else? Mga threats, mga battery, kasi pangaway, assault, coercion, harassment, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty. So meaning, kanang isirad, dili pagawson sa balay, magbuot sige, ilak sa kwarto ang mga asawa o anak. That's actually a form of VAUSI, and we are punishing them under this law again. And this is, the VAUSI is not only those persons liable are not only the husbands, but also those who have sexual relation, those who are in a sexual relationship, those who are living in together, live-in, they are common law spouses, or katong bulag sila, or na sila anak with each other. Those people are very much liable under VAUSI. Again, we must learn how to protect women and children, because under our if you can remember our Philippine Constitution, the family must be protected at all times, women must be protected, children must be protected. So basically, because of this, we must learn how to protect women and children. And we have this in order to stop violence against women and children. Again, violence against women and children is not only limited to physical violence, but also sexual exploitation, to economic abuse, to psychological violence. Those are the types of abuses that are being punished under this law. So now we have come to Republic Act 7877, or an act declaring sexual harassment unlawful in the employment, education, or training environment. So under this law, you have to consider who are liable for sexual harassment. First, those who are sexual harassment is committed by an employer, by an employee, manager, supervisor, agent of employer, teacher, mga teachers, instructors, professor, coach, trainer, or any other person having authority or influence or moral ascendancy over another to a person. So again, you have to consider that that person must have authority, the influence, and moral ascendancy over a person. So most of them, because sexual harassment are often committed in the workplace, in the office, or in the schools, or in training environments. That's why managers, the employer, employees, teachers, and trainers, and other those persons are actually liable, can commit sexual harassment. However, if they are not included in that particular enumeration by the law, but they have still influence or moral ascendancy over the person, then they can still be liable of sexual harassment. So when is there sexual harassment? So there is sexual harassment when these people I mentioned earlier, for a person who has moral ascendancy over another person, would require sexual favor from the other as a condition in hiring or in the employment of person, or in the re-employment, or in the promotion, in giving grades, in granting scholarships, or in providing privileges or benefits. If that is the case, then that is already considered a sexual harassment. Again, sa mga office, sa mga eskwelahan, if your teachers would actually request for some sexual favors just for them to grant you like higher grades, better benefits, or better treatment, then that is considered as sexual harassment. And once you try to go to work, and when you are already working, you are promised to have a promotion, or you will get a salary increase, or you will get better benefits in your office in return for sexual favors, then that is considered as sexual harassment already. That is already considered as sexual harassment. So they are actually punished under this law. So you have to consider again that under this law, you must be safe in your offices and in your school. So if there are those people who take advantage of their positions, of their authority to have sexual favor, to have sexual favors with you, then that is already considered sexual harassment, and they can be liable under this law. So lastly, we have the Republic Act 11313, or the Safe Spaces Act, or an act defining gender-based sexual harassment in streets, public spaces, online spaces, an educational or training institution. So, under this law, we have to consider the Spaces Act is actually a law in the Philippines which provides protection for every individual from unwanted and uninvited sexual harassment and any form of violence in public spaces. So under this law, we have introduced a gender-based sexual harassment, which means every individual, regardless of gender, is protected. And this law has clearly criminalized misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist slurs and remarks. So this law aims that everyone should feel safe in their own personal spaces. So what are the acts that are being punished under this law? So we have here catcalling. Catcalling. Catcalling, kanang manitsit ka, or masyagit ragbay, seksihabay, or mga bayot dong, 150 dong, nga na, or lami asudan bay, lami asudan galakaw bay, or kanang bayot, or kanang tawagon kag bayot buang, di ba? Galakaw ra katawag kag bayot buang, or buying itlogan. This kind of remarks are actually considered as catcalling, and these are being punished under this law. Another one is wolf whistling. When you say wolf whistling, with tuyo, wala ka, di ba? Makafeel ka, mabastos ka because of that. And that is being punished under this law. Another prohibited act is persistent, uninvited comments or gestures on person's appearance. Ingon nga, dako agtutoy or hubaga junoon bay, ano, kanami gisi imong lips, nami paskan, or dong, dako ba na sa junjun, ana. Or, pahikapa ko na ko be, ana. Pero napayuban, like, so, gwapa unta, pero itlugan lang, or itulo imong tutoy. Kaya na magtutulo sa imong tutoy. So, they will point at your breast, or, you know, mag-ana sila, they will do that kind of gestures to express kung sa kada ko imong lubot. That's actually a form of gender. Those are actually gender-based harassments under this gender-based harassment under this law, and they are actually being punished under the Safe Spaces Act. So you have to remember that you have to act like decent persons because of this. So another act that is prohibited under this law is the relentless request for personal details. Again, si pangayo sa imong number or si pangayo sa imong Facebook, even if you have refused to do so, then that is also considered as unlawful. Then another act that is prohibited is the statement of sexual comments and suggestions. Like example, is like may pa sila gahalukanay kitapon unta, di ba? Or that naganan unta kung magtapad ta, or imong ington nga ganan kahimuan ti kag baby. That's actually a form of sexual comment. Those are sexual comments, and again, gender-based sexual harassment po siya again. So you have to be careful with those kinds of remarks, even if uyab mo or something. If kanin yung uyab maka-feel uncomfortable, then di na pwede. And then another act that is prohibited is public masturbation. So slashing sa inyong atubangan, that is actually considered as a prohibited act under this law. So that is not allowed. Another and lastly, those that are or any advances that is unwanted and has threatened one's personal space and physical safety. So again, if there are people nga maka-feel ka, their advances or kanailang mga remarks, maka-feel ka nga nahadlok ka and makes you awkward, or maka-feel ka nga kanang na-threaten ang imong personal space, then that is actually you are being protected under the Safe Spaces Act, and because of that, those people who would actually do it are liable. So under this law, is joke considered as a defense? Maras la, ayaw ra ko kasuhi ani bay kay joke raman to, or yot, di na to yot kay binuang na to yot ana. Is that considered a defense under this law? Under this law, no, jokes are not considered as a defense because the law specifically mentions gender-based sexual harassment is committed regardless of the motive for committing such action or remark. So again, regardless walay labot sa imuhang motive, as long as you have committed that crime, you have committed the gender-based sexual harassment, then you are considered as to have a liable under this law, under the Safe Spaces Act. And when you say gender-based sexual harassment, it means bisag kinsa it can be committed by any other person, by everyone, and regardless of your gender. Or in fact, your gender is actually considered under this law because transphobic against trans women, or against homophobic persons, or against or any sexist remarks or remarks that would discriminate you because of your sex or because of your gender, those are considered as a gender-based sexual harassment. So those are actually being punished under this law. And then what are other acts punished under this law? So we have here gender-based online sexual harassment. So uploading photos or videos without consent. Kanang mo post ka og picture sa inyong barkada nga babayot-bayot, ipasod sa bayo-bayi. And homophobic siya, kaya mo siya ibinuangan, yung tao siya bayot. That's actually considered a prohibited act under this law. And then kanang mga post og mga nude photos sa mga babae, nude photos without their consent, that is actually considered as prohibited under this law. And then those who actually post unwanted sexual remarks, kanang comments and threats done online. So kanang comments and threats and unwanted sexual remarks done online are also being punished. And also identity theft. Identity theft meaning kanang suhid-suhiron, they would steal your personal information and they would create a new profile with your pictures in it. And then usahay kay dauton mo, himuon mong bigaon or mga sa kwarta ana. Under this law, under gender-based online sexual harassment, it is punishable, kana identity theft. So again, who are liable? Tanan, bayi, laki, bayo, tumboy, everybody is liable. So again, where can these crimes be committed? In public spaces. So this includes offices, schools, churches, mga bars, sa mga dalan, alleys, public washrooms, sa mga CR, markets, restaurant, anywhere. As long as it is in public, you must feel safe in public and in your personal space. So that is why you must be protected under this law. And what are the obligations of the academic institutions sa mga eskwelahan? Schools are mandated under this law to provide or publish grievance mechanisms or processes. Naka-provide untag mechanisms or processes in order for the proper filing of complaints by students and faculty. Again, this can be committed by students and this can also be committed by faculty. So basically, schools are mandated to provide for grievance mechanisms, or there must be processes once gender-based sexual harassment has been committed. Then schools, academic institutions must have a process as to how to undergo the investigation and the apprehension of this crime, and they must be able to connect to the authorities so that these crimes must be apprehended, or those people committing these crimes will be punished. So that is the obligation of our academic institutions under this law. So for the penalties, depende, magkataas, and a person may be sentenced to imprisonment for 8 years maximum, if ever, depending on sa judge. So basically, that's it. Under the Safe Spaces Act. So again, everybody should feel safe in their own spaces. So mga bayi, bayot, uglaki, tumboy, everyone should be protected under this law. So that ends our lecture for lesson 5. I hope you have understand. This is actually one of the most extensive lecture that I have ever done for you. So hopefully you have understand the things that I have talked about on how certain crimes in our country can be committed. And again, I have chosen these laws carefully because these laws are the ones that are very much common, and that I think you should be knowledgeable about these laws, because these laws are very important and may have a relationship to you once you become teachers, or that these have certain applications to your lives as students, as ordinary citizens of this country. And I think it's very important for you. I believe that for you, future teachers, it's very important for you to learn, to have basic knowledge on our laws here in the Philippines, because that would allow you to protect your students better, to protect these children better. So if you know these laws, these are revised penal codes and these laws under some special penal laws that we have, then you'll be able to provide, to give protection to our children, most especially that you are, eventually in the future, you will be having custody and authority over these children. So for you to have basic knowledge on these laws in the country, then it means that you can better protect and help them once they find themselves in a very untoward situation, or any kinds of situation that would, that would exploit their minority, that would exploit them. So for you, I think it's for you to better protect them, you must live these laws by heart. You must understand them, as you must know their application. So hopefully you have understood them. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Please comment down below if you have any questions. I would gladly help you with your questions. And please take down notes. We'll be still having lectures, lesson 6. It's part of my lecture, and I'll be uploading that within the week. And I just want you to understand them, because those will be part of your pre-final examination. Your pre-final examination, I'm doing that for you to have shorter coverage for your final examination. So your final examination will only cover lesson 4, module 4, while for pre-finals, it would cover module 3. So hopefully you have taken down notes for this for this lecture, and I hope that you have understand really well. So see you again. Have a nice day, and I do hope that you are all doing fine. Thank you.